What's going on, everybody?
Hey guys.
It's another Sunday night. We're coming to you with another live video talking about travel therapy. Tonight we're going to be talking about traveling as a pair, some of the pros and cons, about if it's feasible to travel with another traveler, things like finding housing, finding two jobs in the same location, all the questions that we get a lot about traveling together.
Right.
So Whitney's going to go ahead and introduce us, and I'm going to share this video in a couple different groups to try to get some more people in here.
All right, guys. So as we kind of usually do, I will just do a quick intro of who we are for those of y'all that might be new and might not know who we are. So my name is Whitney and this is Jared. We are both traveling physical therapists. We have been traveling physical therapists for 3.5 years. We both started out as new grads when we graduated in 2015. So we've been travelers for our whole career. We have a personal blog. It's called Fifth Wheel Physical Therapist, and we started that blog about 2.5 years ago. And a lot of you may have been following that blog since back a few years ago. And Jared kind of writes about finance on there. We write about travel therapy. We write about our own adventures. Recently, we've been writing a lot about our travels out of the country. And then a few months ago, we started a new website called Travel Therapy Mentor. So we're streaming live on the Travel Therapy Mentor group right now. This website is more dedicated just to the goal of mentoring new and prospective travel therapists. So a lot of you guys may be tuning in from knowing us from Travel Therapy Mentor. So if you are signing on and joining us this evening, just leave us a comment below and let us know who you are. If you're checking it out on the replay, we'd love to hear from you as well. Just let us know who you are and why you're coming to see us tonight. So for those of you that have watched our videos before, we've kind of come to you guys live from a few different settings. So we are in a totally new setting this time. We are actually at our new travel location. We just moved to Fredericksburg, Virginia for our most recent contract. And we're kind of sitting in our kitchen right now. So I don't know how the acoustics and lighting and everything are in here, but yeah, we're at our new apartment. We just started, I just started work this week and Jared hasn't started yet, which is something that we want to talk about as far as traveling as a pair, kind of how that whole logistical thing works. So I think Jared's got this video shared in a couple different groups, so we'll have some more people joining us live, hopefully. If you are joining on right now, just leave us a comment below and say hi. Let us know your name, if you're a student, if you're a current therapist, if you're looking into traveling. We'd also love if you would let us know if you are a travel pair, who you're planning on traveling with. You can tag your travel buddies. So a lot of times when we talk about traveling as a pair, we might be talking about a couple like Jared and I, but I've also heard from folks that might be traveling with a friend, a former classmate. I had somebody recently contact us about traveling with her sister. We know people that travel not only just PT and PT, but like different disciplines, so PT and OT, or PT and PTA, or even like a therapist and a nurse. Yep. So go ahead and leave us a comment below and just let us know if you're a solo traveler, if you're a traveler with your friend or your significant other, and who you are.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about our experience. So we've been traveling for 3.5 years, like Whitney said. We've traveled all around the East Coast. So far, we have not had that much trouble finding two jobs together as a pair. That's usually the biggest concern that people have, is finding two jobs in the same location. And that's a valid concern. We are also very concerned about that starting out. But so far, we've had pretty good luck with that. This most recent job search has been the hardest one. And in reality, we could have found something, but we're a lot more picky now, just because we don't have to take contracts as often as we used to. And it's not that we had to before, but we wanted to save as much as we could. So we would be more willing to compromise on either setting or location or something like that. But this most recent job search, we were very picky. So it was a little harder for us to find jobs, but it was more our fault. I think if we had been more lenient like we have in the past, we would have found something a lot more quickly.
Right, so we kind of want to go over just some of what the pros and cons might be of traveling therapy, and then we can kind of give you some background on how those pros or cons have impacted us as a traveling PT pair. So a huge pro would be that you're always traveling with a friend or with a significant other, and it kind of decreases the scariness factor of traveling to new places. Yeah. So that's a big thing to think about, and that's a reason that a lot of people will jump into it as a pair, because it's a little bit easier to move to a whole new area when you're with somebody you know already.
Yeah, Whitney is a lot more extroverted than I am. I'm definitely more introverted, so I think I would have traveled on my own if I wasn't with her, but I think it would have been a lot harder on me to go to new places and like try to make new friends, and it would have been difficult. For her, it probably would have been a big deal.
Well, not so much even just like the making new friends part. Like, you know, if I was a traveler by myself, I wouldn't necessarily have trouble making new friends, but the whole like logistical part of just moving to a new place, setting up housing by myself, and those sort of things would have been a little scary to me, just to be in a new area alone. So there's, you know, some pros and cons to that. A lot of solo travelers just love it, and they love the opportunity to go to a new area by themselves and really be kind of an individual, and it's quite the experience to, you know, be by yourself in a new city and jump into that sort of thing on your own. So there's pros and cons to that, but I would say I think traveling as a pair in general is easier as far as just like socialization and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that is I think that sometimes when you get into a facility and you're making friends with your new coworkers, I think they're less apt to always invite a pair to do things. So sometimes we don't necessarily get as close with some of our coworkers and stuff as we maybe would if we were a solo traveler, because I think if you're like a solo person, they kind of like feel bad for you, and they're like, oh, you know, you want to come to dinner with us on Thursday night, or you want to, you know, join us for this sort of thing, but they don't always ask us because they kind of figure that we have our own plans, I guess.
Yeah, so that's definitely true. Yeah, a lot of the solo travelers that I've talked to, you know, they get really involved with their workmates, I guess, the other people at the facility, and end up doing a lot of things with them, whereas we kind of already know that we are going to spend most of our time together, so I don't think we go out of our way to try to hang out with people as much, and they don't go out of their way to try to invite us as much. So we definitely don't get as involved in the different facilities like that a solo traveler would, or that I would if I was traveling by myself.
Yeah.
But,
So there's just pros and cons to that, but that's just some things to think about. You know, when you're in your new city, if you're with a pair or with a buddy, you'll always have a travel buddy on the weekends to explore new things and do things with. But if you're a solo traveler, you might integrate better into a group and kind of join up with some of your coworkers and that sort of thing. I see a bunch more people have kind of signed on, so if you guys would just introduce yourselves below and comment, let us know, are you introverted, are you extroverted, what's making you lean towards doing it as a pair? I know for a lot of people it's just kind of like convenience. You know, if your significant other can travel, obviously you want to have them with you if possible. So let us know who you are and what your story is.
Yeah, I saw Sean joined. Thanks for joining. We met Sean at CSM probably about a month ago now.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
And then is it John that might be taking a clinical where you're going to be working?
Yeah, so
Small world.
yep, I'm going to be working at a facility for just a couple weeks, but he's got a clinical there, I think in May, so
Yeah.
that'll be interesting.
So in a minute we'll kind of talk a little bit more about our current situation and that whole process of finding jobs. But okay,
So another pro, probably the biggest pro, but it's so this is kind of a pro and a con. We'll talk about both of them. Is that you have shared expenses. So if you're going to get an apartment as a single traveler and it's a short-term apartment, it might cost say $1,200 a month. But obviously, if we're traveling together, we can split that cost, $600 each, right? So that's a big benefit. On the other hand, along with that splitting expenses, it's harder to find housing, especially like housing a room in a house. So a lot of travelers, single travelers, especially male travelers that I've talked to, will just rent a room in a house, and you know, you can usually rent a room for $300 to $400 a month, depending on what area you are. So if I was traveling by myself, that's what I would be doing. I would be trying to find a room, a cheap place to stay, right? So it's kind of a pro in that we can share the cost of an apartment, but it's a con because most rooms in a house don't want two travelers there together. So we've seen several listings where we'll contact them and they're like, no, we don't want two people here, we just want one person here, which is understandable. I understand that, and I would be in the same position if I was renting out a room in my house. But so we have split costs, but we also have more expensive housing because we can't do that.
Yeah, and that's kind of, it just depends on who you are in that situation, because there's a lot of travelers, even as solo travelers, that really want their own space, and they're always going to try to rent an individual apartment, a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, even if it's just them. So if you're that type of solo traveler, then yeah, you are losing out because you're paying for that full apartment, whereas we get the benefit of splitting.
Yeah, if you're the type of traveler that would be on a budget, that's trying to travel as cheaply as possible, you actually might come out ahead on costs by traveling by yourself and just renting a room. if that makes sense.
The other thing to talk about in terms of housing is we found it a lot easier as a pair to do the RV routes. Now we did one of our videos just on RVing, so if you are interested in the RVing route, check out our other video, and also we have an article on that. But I found personally, myself, I wouldn't have been able to do the camper by myself, but as a pair, I found it a lot easier. We always had our own space. It was a lot easier than moving things in and out of an apartment. I had him to help with things like hooking and unhooking the truck that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with, or driving the truck and camper combo. So I thought as a pair that was a lot easier.
Yeah, I would agree.
We're seeing more and more and more couples now that are getting an RV and going the RV route, and I think that's super cool as a couple.
Yeah, I think that's a smart thing to do, especially a lot of couples travel with pets. And yeah, an RV, if you're a couple with a pet and you wouldn't be able to get a room in a house because of the pet anyway, and that kind of thing, I think you come out quite a bit ahead by going the camper route.
Yeah, so there's definitely some pros and cons when it comes to housing. So let me talk a little bit about the cons when it comes to housing as a pair. So, well, this kind of goes along with housing, but it also goes along with job search. All right, so I'll talk about the logistics. So when you're looking for two jobs, to try to find two jobs as a pair, sometimes, rarely, you might be able to find two jobs in the same facility. Most of the time, though, you're going to be looking for just two jobs in the same general area. So when it comes to housing, sometimes it can be a little tricky because they might say, oh, these two jobs are close together, like a half an hour or 45 minutes or an hour apart. But it all depends on where you can find housing if you have to split that difference. So say that one job is here and the other one's an hour away, but all the housing is here. Then this person's gonna have a short commute and this person's gonna have a really long commute. So a lot of times recruiters will try to sell you on jobs, and they'll say, oh, well, if you live right in the middle, it's just 30-minute commute for each of you. But who's to say there's a house available or an apartment available right in the middle?
Yeah, we found that quite a bit actually, because we take jobs in rural places. So there might be a job in a rural place here, a rural place here, they're an hour apart, but there's nothing in between there. It's just farms between there, which means that, yeah, one of us, we're either getting housing here or here, and then one of us is driving a long distance. So
yeah,
it's not an ideal situation.
So that was one thing we found about the camper and the housing for the fifth wheel was if we were presented with a couple of job options, we could always instantly look up to see where the campgrounds were, because that's not really going to change. You can't really instantly look up to see if there's going to be an apartment available. You could see if there is an apartment complex, so that doesn't mean they do short-term housing. That doesn't mean there's an apartment available. But if you can look and see where there's a campground, and this recruiter's trying to sell you on two jobs that are an hour apart, and you're like, well, the campground's nowhere near the middle, then you can know that's a job you need to pass on. It is a little trickier if you're going to do short-term housing, but the best thing to do is when you're looking at jobs and you're being presented jobs, try to get them as close together as possible within like the same city and not that like hour apart, because that's going to put you in a tricky situation.
And some recruiters, you have to be careful, because some recruiters will try to push you into taking jobs. Obviously they get paid when you take the job. So they'll be like, oh, it's not a big deal. You'll find housing in the middle, and you take this one, you take this one. But what we found is that if we hold out, we usually find something pretty close to 30 to 45 minutes apart at the most. Ideally we're at the same facility. That's our optimal situation. But if we can't find something that needs two people, then usually 30 to 45 minutes, we don't have long commutes, and it turns out okay. So we've never been desperate enough that we've taken really far apart contracts and lived in the middle. We also have talked to other couples that I'm not sure why they do this, if they think they have to, or they've had trouble finding jobs, or why, whatever. But I know that there's some couples that one will take a job in a whole different area, and then the other one will still be working in a different area, like say, 2 hours apart or something, and they just try to find a contract when their contract ends. We've never done anything like that. We always move at the same time. We're starting in the same area at the same time, and either we've gotten really lucky with it, or we've just done it smart. I'm not sure what we're doing differently.
Well, I have heard, like for example, if it was like a CODA and a CODA, or a PTA and a PTA, those jobs are a lot harder to come by. So sometimes, for the sake of money and whatever their circumstance might be, sometimes they work in completely different states or completely different areas. Ideally, if you're a PT, an OT, or a speech therapist, or if you have a partner who's an RN, you're not going to have that much trouble finding jobs in the same general area, so you shouldn't have to do that. Like I said,
one caveat about that is we always have taken, or we get licensed in states that have a lot of jobs to have as many options as possible. So I think that is one reason that we've been able to do what we've done and find jobs close together, is because we're only choosing states that have, at a minimum, if we're looking at a state to get licensed in, we want to see like 4 or 5 outpatient jobs there open, or 20 jobs open, or something like that. We don't have any hard criteria, but we're looking for states that have the most jobs. So that really makes a difference. If you're getting licensed in a state that only has 4 open jobs, and you're going there as a pair, you're going to have a hard time finding 2 that are close together.
Right. So there's a bunch of stuff I want to dive into as far as logistics. I just want to do a quick recap. So if you're just joining on, I see a lot of new people have joined on. If you're just joining in, we're talking about traveling as a pair and kind of the logistics of how that works with talking to recruiters, looking for jobs, getting licensed in different states. So I'm going to dive really deep into kind of the logistics of how we do things. If you are hopping on, please just say hi below. Let us know who you are. If you're a PT, an OT, a speech therapist, if your partner is an RN or another therapist, let us know who you are and who you'll be traveling with. We'd appreciate it if you would just comment below. So, talking about logistics, people often ask us, okay, do you work with the same recruiters? We typically do, but we always recommend that every traveler works with multiple recruiters at the same time for every job search. So not just in the beginning, but like throughout your whole career.
Yeah, whether you're an individual traveler or a pair, because some companies will have jobs that other companies don't.
Right.
So if we've had situations where we're working through different companies because, say Whitney finds a really good job, she interviews for it, she really likes it. So I'm looking for a job in that same area, and the company that she's working with doesn't have any jobs there. But then we have this other company that we talked to that does have a job there, and they had an exclusive contract for some reason in that area. So there's situations like that where if you're only working with one company, you might miss out on a perfect job, and that's definitely been the case for us few times.
It's definitely even more important. I can't highlight this enough. It's even more important as a pair to work with multiple recruiters, because you can't rely on just one company and just one recruiter to have 2 jobs in the same area for the same start date. So if you guys are watching and you want to hear about the recruiters that we've had good success with working as a pair, just comment below and say recruiter. And then after this is over, we'll send you a message with our favorite recruiters. So I would recommend having 2 to 3, if not 4 and 5, sometimes companies. Beyond that, they're mostly going to have like 90% of the same jobs, but you will find that certain companies have outlier jobs.
Yeah, I would say like 3. It starts to get a little, so this last job search we had.
Hold on, I'm getting there. Just keep with the organization. Okay. So you want to work with multiple recruiters at the same time, and they always know that we are a pair. Yeah. But when it comes time to taking the job, it doesn't matter which one. Like we will be working with recruiters A, B, and C. But then, if recruiter A finds me a job in Phoenix, Arizona, and recruiter B finds him a job in Phoenix, Arizona, then we'll agree on it, and just, I'll take the one job with recruiter A and he'll take the one job with recruiter B. Yeah. So at the same time, we're working with the same recruiters, the same group of recruiters, but it doesn't matter to us which one we take a job with. But what we tend to do that's different than some people is we pretty much always try to make it where we accept kind of like right at the same time. Yeah. With the exception of this contract, because it just did not work out this time. But
well, not only that, I was not in a position where I really needed to take a job. So I was completely fine with if Whitney took a job and I didn't for the next 2 months, I was fine with that.
Yeah. So we have known some travel pairs that will just go ahead, and if they find a really good job, the one person will take it and then they'll wait a little while for the other one. We, in the past, for our first 3 years, really didn't want to risk it. We didn't want to risk waiting to see if there was going to be another job in the area. So we pretty much always would sometimes not even interview if there weren't 2 jobs. But sometimes we might interview and then kind of like within that same week be looking for another job in that area. And then if one of us had an interview and nothing popped up within the same week, we would turn down that job. So like we've been kind of alluding to this recent time, we got back from our trip out of the country in December, and we thought that we were going to start work in January. And we had no problem in the past. We have always had back-to-back contracts. And so up until this point, we never had any trouble with, long periods of time off. And so, sorry, I just saw Amanda's comment and it's making me kind of second guess my whole life. Amanda says, can you please get to the point? The video is taking too long, no offense. sorry, Amanda, there's a lot to talk about. If you want to just rewatch it later and maybe skip to the important parts.
But pretty much, I mean,
We tend to be long-winded. It just is what it is. But sorry, that just really distracted me. So yeah, in the past, we have been able to line them up back to back, and we've been pretty fortunate that way. So we were super surprised that in January, when we thought we'd have jobs lined up, there was just nothing there. And so I think it was a little bit of bad timing, and then it was a little bit, like Jared said, we were being a little picky. And so we ended up waiting like a month and a half, and we had the luxury where we weren't super pushed financially or pushed for time to go ahead and get another job. We were at home.
Yeah.
We were enjoying seeing our family. So this is the first ever contract in 3.5 years that I accepted a contract, and we actually got an apartment and moved, and I started, and Jared doesn't have a job yet. But within the first week of us being here, Jared has found a job, and he starts next week.
Yeah, not a big deal.
So thanks, Allison. So we're gonna go over some comments here in a few minutes. I have a couple more key points I wanted to go over, but if you guys have questions, specific questions that you want to know about traveling as a pair, then just go ahead and comment below. Amanda, if you have a specific question about traveling as a pair, please leave a comment below and we will be happy to answer it. We're just sort of going over some of the logistics of what it's like to travel as a pair and what you can expect to travel as a pair. So that's kind of the point that we're making. So as far as logistics, we talked about recruiters. We talked about working with multiple recruiters. Oh, I know a point. So if your significant other or your travel partner is not a therapist, like for example, if they're an RN or something, or maybe like a lab tech or something like that, sometimes different recruiters and different companies work with different disciplines. So for the most part, if you're a PT, OT, speech therapist, PTA, OTA, you'll have like the same group of recruiters that will work and place jobs for all of those therapy categories. But if your partner or your travel buddy is a nurse or some other discipline, they might need a different recruiter. And so again, you would just have to play that back and forth game, like, hey, our one recruiter has this job in Phoenix, do you have any jobs in Phoenix? And that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and we sort of touched on housing, same versus different facilities. So like I said, we have worked in the same facility before, but a lot of times you're gonna find that you'll be at different facilities. So cars is something to think about logistically.
Yeah, obviously if you're going to be working likely not in the same facility, you're going to need to take 2 cars. Traveling as a pair, that's something that sometimes people don't think about, especially if you go like the camper route like we did. When you're traveling separately, you might be traveling across the country. You're not going to be riding together though, which some people are upset about. I mean, we don't enjoy driving separately, but it's not a huge deal. But I've talked to other people that really hate the fact that when you're moving long distances, you're not riding in the car together, You're just following each other.
Which there's other things that you could do.
You could rent a car.
Yeah, you could rent a car in the second area, like especially if you were gonna go all the way to Alaska or something. I mean, you're probably gonna Amanda, I'm so sorry that you want us to get to the point. If it's not something that you want to keep watching, we're happy to let you sign off and not watch. But we're just kind of going over some
We're just talking about traveling as a couple. But
anyway, so cars. We've heard some people shipping cars. Maybe drive one if you really want to drive together, and then ship the other. There are companies that will ship cars for you. Some people might want to buy a used car when you get to the area or rent a car if you want to drive together. But generally, we bring 2 cars. Hi, Mina. Thanks for joining on.
Oh, I didn't know you're...
Wait, is your boyfriend traveling with you now? That's so exciting.
That's awesome.
Mina is another travel therapist that we met at one of our assignments, and her significant other is also a therapist, but they were not traveling together in the beginning. So did you convince him to start traveling with you, Mina? But anyway, we're talking about cars. So we had the camper. So we had the truck where we pulled the 5th wheel with it, and that's what Jared would drive to work. And then I had my car, I would just drive separate. Some people would ask us if we attached the car to the back of the camper. I don't think like
Not
3 vehicles in a caravan is a good idea. So no, we never attached the car to the back of it. But also if you had like a big SUV and a little car, you could tow the little car behind with like a dolly. Might be another option. So let me think. I've got a couple more things logistically I want to talk about. If you guys are joining in, thank you, Troy. I'm glad that you're enjoying the video. If y'all are enjoying the video and have questions, please comment below. We'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff we're forgetting.
Yeah.
One other logistical thing I wanted to talk about. Some people always ask us, if you're working as a pair, do you both get a stipend? And yes, so basically when you work as a pair, all that means is that you're choosing to line up contracts together and choosing to travel at the same place in the same time. So you are still an individual, you still get paid individually, you still get your own contract, your own stipend, your own everything. So kind of benefit, right? The
Yep.
two stipends, you wanna talk about that?
Yeah, it is. Like I was talking about with housing, I mean, so if you get two separate stipends and you can find pretty cheap housing, or if you're traveling in an RV and you find a cheap campground, then getting those two separate stipends is a big benefit. As long as you're still able to get cheap housing for a pair versus, you know, what you would get as a single person.
Right. So yeah, so in terms of contracts, you get your own contract, your own pay, your own stipend. So if you can get two stipends and live pretty cheaply together, then you're gonna come out ahead financially.
Definitely.
So yeah, those are some of the things that I have thought of as far as logistics. What comments or questions do you guys have as far as traveling as a pair? Please comment below and let us know, and we will read through some of the comments. Kind of go back to the top and see who's on with us. Okay, so Kai Lamb has tuned into a couple videos. Thank you, Kai. He's a PhD student that's planning on traveling with a speech therapist.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, Jeff is on with us. Jeff is my friend from undergrad, and him and his girlfriend are going to be PTs in a few months. Congratulations. And y'all are going to be traveling together.
And Montana, man, I really want to go to Montana. That sounds awesome.
Oh, wow. One of the recruiters has a job opportunity in Montana for both of you. Wow. I think it would be super fun. I mean, just think of all the hiking and the adventuring and exploring you guys could do together. I mean, you could even go up to Canada, and you'll have a good time, you know, with your coworkers. I'm sure everybody will be super nice and accommodating.
Yeah, and like we talked about in the beginning, like that's a big benefit of traveling as a pair is say you go there and you really don't like your coworkers of the area, at least you guys can hang out together. Like there's always Netflix to watch and dinners to go to and stuff like that.
We are so silly. Like we always say that we have a lot of fun just in a new area. Like we've been here for 6 days and we have explored 2 new grocery stores and a new gym, and we drove around the downtown and we went the wrong way on a one-way street, and that was interesting.
That was bad.
And we've just been having a really good time, and we're enjoying our little efficiency apartment with our like super just quaint little new kitchen, and we're just having a blast, even though it's like not, you know, no super exciting town.
Yeah.
We're just having a lot of fun.
Yep.
Okay, so Sharon McCallum. Hey, we've talked to Sharon before, PT that's traveling in the next year, wants to know any recruiter input. Sharon, I'll shoot you a message about recruiters. Thank you. Allison, thanks again for your support.
Okay,
Jill
Jill said, how often do you end up at the same facility? Really not that often. I would say,
We've worked in like, I'd say maybe almost half though.
I don't know about half. Maybe like 25% of the time, I would say. Quarter, so somewhere between a quarter and a half of the time we end up in the same place. We do end up a lot of times working for the same company, but in different facilities.
That's right. I was going to say, I was considering that the same facility because we've worked for the same company, especially like rural hospitals. Sometimes they'll be like the same hospital system, but they'll have different locations.
Yeah.
So we've had a couple where we worked like for the same organization, but like I worked at this hospital and he was at this one like 20 minutes away.
And that's actually happening right now. She's going to be working for a outpatient private practice. I'm working for the same one, but we're going to be in different facilities. So it's the same company, different facilities. So you still couldn't like take one car or anything like that. But yeah, that's probably the most common thing. We end up working different facilities for the same company.
Mina, so you did get your boyfriend to start traveling with you. I love it. I'm super glad. And Mina, are you and your boyfriend in the same facility? Because you're in Charleston, right? Are y'all in the same facility or different facilities? Let us know. Okay, Aaron.
What state? We're in Virginia right now, Fredericksburg, which is about 3 hours away from our hometown in Roanoke. So,
and it's about an hour south of DC.
Yeah, hour north of Richmond, hour south of DC. It's a really, really good location. We really like it here.
Okay, Troy, thanks again for your support. Elizabeth, Lindsay, thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Thank you, Mindy, for your support as well. I appreciate it. It is definitely hard to be live and to please everybody, but we're trying our best. Okay. Oh, so Mina and her boyfriend are also thinking about getting a fifth wheel. Yeah, I mean, it's not for everybody. There's pros and cons to it, but it works pretty well for us, I would say. Okay. All right, Allison wants to know about extending contracts, especially if one of you might extend or the other might not.
So we would only ever extend if both of us could. So we would not extend one contract without the other person having a job. If we both could extend, great. Or if one of us could extend and there was another job the other one could take in the same area, then that would be fine. And we really do like to stay in the same location, ideally for somewhere between 6 to 9 months. We're not travelers that like to move a lot. We're mostly traveling for, being in new areas and making more money. So if we can stay in one spot longer, we'll do that. So we ideally like to extend in our facilities as long as we like them. But if only one of us could, we would just move on.
Yeah. So we kind of it helps when your recruiters know and are understanding of the fact that you are a team. And sometimes it does make it a little trickier, but they're pretty much always understanding that we'll kind of feel out the situation. For example, like usually it's with your DOR. If you have a pretty good connection with your manager or your director of rehab, you'll get a feel for whether they need you a little longer. And before you commit to anything, you just get an idea, and then the other person gets an idea from their DOR. And then you say, hey, what if, I maybe can't extend for the full time, but what if we could just extend for a few weeks? And then they might say yes, and the other DOR might say yes, and that sort of thing. So it kind of goes back and forth like that. Let's see. Okay. All right, so drama going on, but we'll skip that. Aaron is in Richmond. Cool, yeah, we're not far from Richmond, which is awesome.
I actually have to go to Powhatan, which is, I guess, pretty close. It's maybe like 15 or 20 minutes west of Richmond for training on Wednesday, so I'll be down in that area.
Mina says that her and her boyfriend are at different facilities, but the same traveling company, so that's kind of similar to us, which is awesome.
What's going on, Brandon?
Thanks for joining in. Shout out to the Roanoke crew.
Yeah.
Okay, so Maria wants to know what states you have found that have a lot of jobs.
So on the East Coast, which is where we've been, Massachusetts has a lot of jobs, Virginia has a lot of jobs, and North Carolina have a lot of jobs. Those are the main three that we found, and that's why we got licensed in those three, actually. Well, Virginia, because that's our home state, North Carolina, and Massachusetts, both because of jobs. So those weren't our first choices. We actually wanted to go to Georgia, and we wanted to go to Maine. But you look at the job options there, and there's not as many. So instead of that, we compromised by, we found a state in the Northeast that has a lot of jobs. We found a state in the South that has a lot of jobs. So
yeah, we kind of had to compromise. I will say, actually, since we skipped Georgia, I have seen quite a few jobs pop up in Georgia. So I do think Georgia in general is a pretty good state. It just so happened, one of my recruiters, or lots of my recruiters will say it's all about timing. So it just depends. But at the time that we were searching in Georgia, it wasn't good for us. We do have another set of friends that traveled together, and they had good luck in Georgia.
Yeah.
So what we typically do is, there's one of the companies that we really like that keeps their website pretty up to date. If you guys want to just comment below and ask us for recruiter recommendations and company recommendations, just leave us a comment below, and I can send you the name of the one that we like a lot, that they typically keep their website pretty up to date, and we actually use their website to sort of gauge what our future is going to be like.
So we'll go to their website, type in a state, see how many jobs are, and then based on that, we'll kind of decide if we would want to get licensed in that state or not.
Right.
So if we type in, say, Maryland, and there's 2 jobs, we're not going to get licensed in Maryland. It doesn't make sense.
And it can change day to day, week to week, but we would kind of like say right now, if we were going to go ahead and look at getting licensed in 3 months to the next state, we would watch it over the next few weeks. And then we would also ask our recruiter, hey, we want to go to the West Coast. Which states do you tend to see the most jobs? And the recruiters can give you some pretty good advice on what trends they see. Like, for example, I did a search the other day. Somebody was asking me about Colorado, and Colorado had hardly any jobs. But I know that Washington State has a lot of jobs. Oregon has a lot of jobs. California is a huge hotspot for jobs. Sometimes Arizona, but Arizona for us was hit or miss in January when we wanted to go. So, but I would say just in general, I think Massachusetts is really good. Washington, Oregon, California. Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia. Florida, not so much. If you're a solo traveler, Florida can be pretty good, but Florida's really tough for pairs. So I wouldn't put your money on Florida as a pair. Yeah. Okay, Jeff wants us to tell his girlfriend that it won't be that bad working in the same facility together.
No, that's not that bad.
It depends.
Yeah.
So we've done really good with it before, but there was one assignment that was really stressful. And I can tell you, living together, commuting together, working together, commuting back home together, going to the gym together, like it got to be a lot. But it was a super stressful contract, and Jared handles stress different than I handle stress. He likes to poke fun at me, not me, but just in general, he likes to joke around to kind of de-stress. And me, I just wanted to put the blinders on, get my work done, get out of there. So it depends. We've also worked at one facility together that was like huge. It was this huge outpatient clinic, and it was like a horseshoe kind of. He was on this side of the clinic, and I was on this side of the clinic.
We didn't even see each other.
We hardly ever even saw each other.
Yep. So it just depends, and it also depends on your schedule. We've worked in the same facility before where we don't even work the same hours. So being in the same facility is not a big deal if you're working different hours, but it really depends on your relationship.
Yeah. So Jeff, we can chat a little bit more about that. Okay, Troy wants to know, or Troy says that he's going to be starting traveling in June with his fiance, who's also PT. How far out do you start hearing about jobs?
Start looking, I would say probably we usually start maybe 2 months before, and usually you won't find anything that far out, but it's always good to just like kind of fill out what's available, what might be available for 2 months from now. But generally we're finding contracts somewhere between 6 weeks to 2 weeks before we actually want to start. So it's pretty last minute most of the time.
Yeah, they usually list them as ASAP starts, which depending on credentialing and all that sort of thing is typically like 2 to 3 weeks. So for the most part, when you really, really want to nail down your job search is between 2 months and 1 month before your contract. I'd say like 6 weeks average.
Yeah.
But don't get too nervous until you're like 3 to 4 weeks out. That's when we usually start getting nervous and start thinking of like plan B and stuff like that. And by plan B, I mean like say we were really looking for 2 outpatient jobs, but it got down to like 3 weeks in advance, then we might start thinking like, okay, maybe one of us could take outpatient and maybe the other one could take something else.
Yeah.
Hi Xander, good to see you on here. Mina wants to know about Arizona license. How long did it take for it to go through?
Let's see.
It took us a little longer because, okay, Arizona is one of those that requires you to actually go take the jurisprudence test in person, and then also the fingerprinting took us a long time because I know it took me a while because they had to do like actual ink fingerprints, and I had to mail them back. They had to mail me the form. I had to mail it back to them. Then they said that my quality of prints wasn't good enough. So then they had to mail me another form. I had to go get it redone, mail it back to them.
Yeah.
So I think it probably took us like 2 to 3 months, but I think you can get it done in like 4 to 6 weeks if it's pretty diligent.
Yeah, and basically we had everything lined up before we ever took the jurisprudence. So once we took the test, it was like 2 days and we were licensed. So if you have everything already in, once you take the test, it should be pretty quick.
Yeah, and Mina, if you want to send me a message, I have the lady's email address that was really quick to respond by email. That was the best way I was able to get through instead of trying to call. Okay, so we got some people asking for recruiters. That's wonderful. We'll be happy to send you guys recruiters afterwards. So we're going to wrap up here. If you guys have any additional questions, please comment below and we can answer them. If not, if you guys want to know about which recruiters that we've worked with as a pair or individually, you can comment below, just comment recruiters, and we'll send you a message after the video is done. So thank you guys.
Thanks for tuning in. Sorry it took so long.
Yeah,
Again, all of our videos take a long time.
We're kind of long-winded. We try to keep them short, but there's just
hard.
a lot to go over.
There's a lot of information. There's a lot of variables. So
yeah.
We'll do the best we can. But
yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you guys next week. If you guys have any comments, questions, anything, just comment below or please send us a message and we'd be happy to help you.
Yep, thanks.
All right, see ya.
Bye.